Can we just agree that Fox has no idea how to broadcast football, that they're a laughingstock, that they're an embarrassment, and that they should not be broadcasting NFL games in the future? Because, my God, this broadcast was embarrassing. Welcome, everybody, to GG9 News, where we talk about all things NFL all the time. I'm Jared Garrett, representing the 904 from the 602, and today we are talking about the game between these two teams behind me right here, the Washington Commanders and the Detroit Lions. Now, this divisional round game was absolutely incredible, super high scoring as everyone expected it to be. Maybe the best game of the postseason, tons of fun to watch. The Commanders ended up winning it 45-31 to advance to the NFC Championship. And for the franchise, this is Washington's first appearance since the 1991 NFC Championship game. 32 seasons in the making. Who would have thought that Washington, after being the second worst team in football last year, 12 months later, would now find themselves 60 minutes away from the Super Bowl and a potential trip to New Orleans. It is truly a remarkable turnaround, and credit to Jaden Daniels and Dan Quinn and everyone in Washington for the job that they have done assembling this team and making this turnaround, this improbable turnaround possible. One of the greatest single-season turnarounds in NFL history. Having said that, while the game itself was really good, the broadcast by Fox was absolute crap. Fox, it was like they had no idea how to broadcast a football game. There were so many errors that took place during this game, one of them being in the first quarter when they showed an advertisement in the middle of the play, because that's a thing that happens apparently. They had no idea when to cut away, so they showed an ad in the middle of a play. It was a third down play, not like it's a big play or anything like that, not like third down's a big down or anything like that. But one of the biggest issues that Fox did was toward the end of the game, and I have to call it out because it is astounding how awful Fox was during this moment in particular, and how the hypocrisy of them calling out other people for doing the same thing that they just did and making it 10 times worse, it needs to be dissected. So again, Washington makes it to the NFC Championship. It's the franchise's first appearance since the 1991 NFC Championship. Again, it was the longest drought in the NFC among active franchises to make it from one conference championship to the other, 32 seasons. The last time they made it, oddly enough, that game to go to Super Bowl 26, they played the Detroit Lions. Now, that game was an absolute bloodbath. Washington steamrolled Detroit, one that won 41-10, shut down Barry Sanders. Detroit never had a chance in that one. 91 team might be the greatest team in NFL history to ever win a Super Bowl. It's up there at the very least for one of the best of all time. And Fox decided to commemorate that by showing some historical footage and being like, hey, the last time that Washington made it to the NFC Championship, they played the Lions. Let's show some highlights, go back in the day and show you what happened. And it makes sense to do something like that. It makes complete sense. We see broadcasts do that all the time the historical element, show the relevance and put into significance how long the drought was. It makes a ton of sense to do that. Having said that, the way they did it was absolutely insane, because you notice there's something glaringly wrong when they show the footage, and you might be able to tell what it is. Because as you can clearly see, that is not the logo of Washington when they made it to the 1991 NFC Championship. They were not the Washington Commanders back then. I think if you showed that logo to people back in the 1991 season, or January 12th, 1992, when the game was played, you'd be wondering, who the heck is that franchise? Because that is not the logo. They were the Washington Redskins back then, and yet Fox, for some reason, refused to show the logo. They did not show the Washington Redskins logo, even though that was the logo they used back then, and even though that was the name of the team back then. It was a completely different logo from basically a completely different team that they showed that did not exist back then. This is whitewashing at its finest. You cannot change the past. You can learn from your mistakes, but you cannot change the past. The past is history, and history needs to be remembered. Changing the name is one thing. This is not a debate about changing the name from Redskins to Commanders. It is not a debate about that in the slightest bit, or I guess Redskins to football team to Commanders. But to erase all historical data and pretend like it never happened and show a logo that was not the logo back then and is the logo of a completely different team name is insane to me. It's like saying that when Bob Uecker died, rest in peace to an absolute legend, he was an instrumental part in making Major League happen. That movie does not function without Bob Uecker's contributions. I loved his role in that movie as the announcer for the Cleveland Guardians. He was great with the Cleveland Guardians. Like, what are we doing here? What are we doing here? Not referring to them by name, that's one thing. If you want to say Washington, by all means, go for it. I've done that before. I'll continue to do that when it's appropriate. I have no problem not referring to them by name and just calling them a city. But you've got to use the logo. You are presenting a reality and a history that did not happen. By showing the Commanders logo when they were the Washington Redskins back then, you are presenting a history that is fake. You are presenting a history that you want to believe is real because you want to have the moral high ground, but it's a history that did not happen. It's almost like when you're quoting someone. Let's say that you're quoting someone, you're doing a history video, and let's say that Joe Gibbs is talking about his team. Let's say Joe Gibbs is talking about, and I'm just making this up, let's say Joe Gibbs is talking about his team before a game against the New York Giants. And he says before the game, I think this is the best Redskins team we've ever had. I think this is the best team the Redskins have ever assembled. I'm not going to change the quote to say that Joe Gibbs said that I think this is the best Commanders team ever assembled. You can't do that. That's whitewashing. That's changing the history to fit a narrative that does not exist. When I talk about the winner of Super Bowl 34, it was the St. Louis Rams, not the Los Angeles Rams. Yet, if I showed this graphic to show that the Rams won the Super Bowl over the Titans that season, if I showed this graphic, you would all say that I don't know my history. You would say this graphic is insane. That's not the logo. You wouldn't dare show the Los Angeles Rams logo to symbolize a St. Louis Rams Super Bowl win back in the 1999 season. Yet, that's exactly what Fox did here, showing the Washington Commanders logo when that was not the name of the team back then. That was not the logo back then. It's just embarrassing. It is astounding to me. And especially astounding because the hypocrisy. Can we talk about the hypocrisy of this for a second? That Fox, of all companies, is doing this? Because guess what? Just a few weeks ago on Sunday Night Football, your own network literally called out NBC for doing the exact same thing. NBC showed a graphic showing Jaden Daniels breaking the rookie franchise rushing record set by Robert Griffin III in 2012 because Daniels had a phenomenal season and he broke the rookie rush record. They showed him alongside RG3. And they showed this graphic. And you might notice on this graphic that the jersey is not the right jersey for RG3 because they omit the name Redskins from the jersey. They digitally took out the name Redskins for some reason. They alter the image to craft a narrative and try and erase history, which I think is absolutely disgusting. It's funny, too, because they could have easily skirted that entire controversy, but it's showing an image of RG3 getting drafted. Look at this image of RG3 getting drafted. There's no mention of the team name. There's no mention of the logo there. You don't see a thing. You don't see a name or a logo anywhere in that. You could have shown that and been totally fine, but no, you had to do this and basically create a mountain of a molehill by trying to erase history. And Fox puts out this article on their website talking about NBC omitting Redskins from their star quarterback's jersey as Daniel sets the franchise mark, which they have every right to criticize because, again, you're changing history to craft a narrative that did not exist. But then you go around and do the exact same freaking thing. You go around and you omit the logo. How are you taking the moral high ground on one thing and then doing the opposite on the other? This is the same exact thing. If anything, it might be worse because at least with NBC, they showed a jersey that you could at least make out was the right jersey. That's not the right logo. I mean, it's very clear that is not the right logo of the team that made it to the 1991 NFC Championship. You're creating a logo that was not a thing back then. Then again, let's call for what it is because Fox did a crap job with that game. This entire segment was crap. The Lions logo, that wasn't their logo back then. The Commanders logo, they were the Redskins. That logo did not exist back then. The team name didn't exist back then. And they played the whole thing under Oasis's song Supersonic, which was a song that came out in 1994, 2 years after this game was played. So the band didn't even exist. And then what the heck is that font for 1991 NFC Championship? What is that font? That's not 90s at all. That looks more like late 70s, early 80s Midnight Special kind of thing. That is insane to me. This whole segment was crap, but I just had to point that out because this is a real problem. Again, it's not about changing the name. It has never been about changing the name. Changing the name is one thing. If you want to refer them as Washington, by all means, go for it. No one's stopping you. I'm not stopping you. I do the same exact thing when it's appropriate. But you cannot change the past. The Washington Redskins were the team that played the Detroit Lions in the 1991 NFC Championship game. The Washington Redskins were the team that won Super Bowl 26. It was not the Washington Commanders. So stop pretending that it was the Washington Commanders. It's like saying in Super Bowl 5, the Indianapolis Colts won it all. It's not. It was the Baltimore Colts. Stop trying to change history and change things that have happened in the past to create a narrative and a high ground that does not exist. It is disgusting. It is shameful what Fox did. It is careless. It is sloppy. It is hypocritical. It is hypocrisy at its finest. Let's just call for what it is. And this whole thing needs to be seriously reevaluated. If we can't show a logo in a historical context, we've got some issues. If we can't show history, we've got some issues. Not saying we need to keep the name, because again, it's not about that whatsoever. I had no problem changing the name. I'm one favorite flirt. I had no problem changing the name. It's not about changing the name. But it was a thing that happened in the past. It was a thing. And when referring to that thing, you have to show that thing and not the thing that didn't exist at the time. And Fox did not do that. Fox erased history, and that is unacceptable. But what are your thoughts on this whole broadcasting controversy by Fox? What are your thoughts on Fox's decision to omit the Redskins logo and pretend that the Washington Commanders were the team that made it to Super Bowl 26 and beat the Lions in the 1991 NFC Championship game? What are your thoughts on all this? Let me know your thoughts in the comments down below. And that's going to do it for this episode of JGN News. Be sure you like and subscribe to help us the channel out a lot. And be sure to check out my main channel, Jared9, where we talk about all things NFL history all the time. Until next time, this is Jared9 signing off. And as always, go Jags.